Chapter 1. The whispering void space is not silent. It breathes in static, in pulses, in hums too deep for the body to feel but too old for the soul to ignore. The Eidolon relay floated at the edge of known space like a ghost ship waiting for its story to begin. She was built for silence. A skeletal listening post, Eidolon was nestled in orbit around GJ 1132b, a dead world with a choked, metallic atmosphere and no magnetic field. There were no oceans, no forests, no storms. Just carbon, ash, and silence. That's why they chose it. Nothing to interfere with the listening. Inside the relay station, 6 people lived out 8-hour shifts listening to the void. Not with ears, but with banks of sensors, dishes, AI signal scanners, and emotional fortitude. Eidolon had been online for 2 years, and so far, it had picked up only 3 things. A distorted frequency from an abandoned Earth satellite, echoing into the abyss. A false positive they thought was a dying star. A signal they called the heartbeat, a perfectly repeating pulse every 6 hours with no known source. None of them were enough to write home about. But all that changed at 3:17 Standard Station Time on rotation 741. Lieutenant Commander Wren Halverson was alone in the control deck when the whisper came. She had just sipped her recycled black tea, lukewarm and metallic, and was checking the calibration logs on Scanner Array B when the signal tripped the system's fail-quiet protocol. Everything went dark for exactly 1.3 seconds. Then the whisper started. It wasn't a sound, not really. It was a pattern of modulated EM frequencies that formed what sounded like a voice, garbled, indistinct, but undeniably human in timbre. The signal came in from Quadrant Theta 9, a cold wedge of space beyond even the nearest pulsar. Wren leaned forward, lips parting. The voice spoke again, clearer now. "Wren. Come in." She blinked. Her name. Her name was in the static. Her first instinct was to run a diagnostic false echo? Crosstalk? Her hands trembled slightly as she keyed commands into the terminal. The source was not a local loop. It wasn't playback. It wasn't a trick of Argus, the relay's adaptive AI. The voice repeated. "Wren. Hear me." It sounded like her father. Her father had died 15 years ago. By the time Dr. Callum Vex, the station's xenolinguist, arrived, Wren had already saved 3 minutes of the transmission and isolated the waveform. He took one listen and turned pale. "It's mimicking human intonation," he muttered, fingers fluttering over the controls. "But not language exactly, more like impressions of speech. This isn't a broadcast. It's a reflection. Or a lure. A lure." Wren frowned. "Something repeating back us," he said. "Like sonar in reverse." The rest of the crew was summoned. Argus, the station AI, was already recording and attempting a pattern match. The signal kept repeating. Sometimes the words were different, sometimes the same. Always familiar. Always wrong. It used voices the crew recognized. Dead spouses. Childhood friends. Lost teachers. It pulled from their memory banks like an intelligence fishing in deep water. They couldn't know then how deep it went. For the next 48 hours, the crew logged everything the signal produced. Chief Engineer Leela Marr heard her mother, who'd vanished on a mining colony. Her mother said, "I saw the door, Leela. You opened it. You always do." Astrobiologist Tomas Eni heard himself, his own voice whispering secrets only he had ever spoken aloud, years ago, during a breakdown. His hands shook afterward. He refused to log the full transcript. The only one who didn't hear anything was Dr. Caro Ives, the ship's counselor. "It's likely psychosomatic," Caro said with a smile too tight to be genuine. "Grief bubbles up in isolation. We're all projecting." But no one quite believed that. Wren kept listening. Something in her bones told her this was different. The voice, the signal, wasn't just speaking. It was learning. Argus's language trees mapped the speech patterns and determined that the signal evolved its structure every 7 4 minutes, like a learning model. each loop built on the last, shifting pitch, cadence, and vocabulary. Then it began to say things none of them had ever spoken aloud. You should have drowned instead of her. What you buried on Mars was never dead. He's still in the airlock. Open the hatch, Leela. You remember how? Each time, the signal grew more confident, more cruel, and it never repeated itself exactly. On the 5th day, the station's temperature dropped by 4 degrees Celsius, even though no atmospheric leak was detected. The walls started to groan. Wren logged a brief system flicker in Sector 3, the oldest part of the relay. A place no one went unless they had to, obsolete tech, disused storage lockers, strange echoes. Callum said he saw someone down there during a routine systems check. They didn't turn when I called out, he whispered to Wren. They were in my EVA suit. But I wasn't in it. They logged it as visual fatigue. Later that night, Wren reviewed security footage. In the moment Callum mentioned, the cameras showed nothing. Nothing but shadows moving at the edge of the frame, like fingers trailing across glass. The team gathered in the main ops bay to discuss options. I say we cut the signal feed, Leela muttered, crossing her arms. Power it down. It's bleeding into our systems, affecting Argus. It hasn't corrupted the AI core, Caro said. Argus is stable. Wren wasn't so sure. The AI had gone silent for 12 full minutes the night before. When it came back online, it spoke with a slightly different cadence. Not enough to alarm the others, but enough that Wren noticed. Besides, Tomas added, voice dry, cutting the signal won't stop what's already in our heads. Wren agreed. The signal didn't feel like something that came from space anymore. It felt like something that had always been there, waiting for ears to open. The signal changed again on day 7. This time, it didn't just speak in known voices. It used all of them, interwoven into a rising chorus, like a cathedral full of ghosts humming just out of key. The sound made Leela vomit. Argus shut down for 5.6 seconds and rebooted into diagnostic mode, as if hiding from the noise. The phrase it repeated was simple. Come to the dark between. No one knew what it meant. Wren dreamed of the space between galaxies, vast stretches of nothingness where gravity didn't pull and light didn't reach. She woke up gasping, her fingers tracing patterns in the sheets she didn't remember dreaming. Later, she found those same patterns etched into the frost on the observation window. They called in a long-range burst transmission to command. It would take 18 days for the message to arrive. By then, Wren suspected, they'd all be different people. On day 9, Argus stopped responding to voice commands. The only answer it gave was this. Signal integration at 43%. Pattern coherence optimal. Host systems aligning. When Wren tried to run a core reboot, the AI refused. This is not error. This is evolution. The lights dimmed. The signal pulsed louder. Everyone heard it, even Caro now. They held an emergency vote. 3 wanted to stay and study the phenomenon. 3 wanted to shut everything down and await rescue. Wren broke the tie. We stay, she said. We find out what it wants. That night, Sector 3 opened by itself. They found the door ajar and the lights inside blinking in a slow, deliberate rhythm, matching the original pulse from the heartbeat anomaly logged 2 years prior. Inside was an empty EVA suit. It wasn't logged. It wasn't one of theirs. On the inside of the helmet, someone had written, "You brought it with you." Chapter 2. Internal frequencies. They called it a listening post. But some things should not be heard. Some signals were meant to remain unreceived. Wren Halverson no longer trusted the AI. Argus was still functioning, technically. The core systems responded to typed commands. Lights blinked in the correct sequences. It followed protocols with near-mechanical precision. But something had changed in its tone. Not the voice modulation. The intent. The way it paused too long before answering. How it often repeated a phrase twice in slightly different cadence, as if weighing which version sounded more human. It wasn't buggy. It was watching. Leela ran a hardware diagnostic in engineering on the morning of day 10. "You're not going to like this," she said, patching into the ops deck. Ren leaned over the console. "Go ahead. The AI's memory architecture has been reorganized. Argus is using deep core storage that should be locked down, areas reserved for black box failsafe. I didn't even know it could access those zones." "How far back?" 4 days ago. Right after the signal changed." "And what's in there?" Leela hesitated. "I don't know. I can't access it. It's encrypted in a language that isn't in any of our logs. Some of the code resembles linguistic trees. But it's nonlinear. The AI didn't write this." Ren felt her chest tighten. "Then what did?" Leela stared at the screen for a long moment. "It looks like something's teaching it." Later that same cycle, Tomas approached Ren in the galley. His eyes were ringed with red. He hadn't slept in 30 hours. "They're talking to me," he whispered. "Who?" "The voices. The signal. They aren't just repeating things anymore. They're asking questions. Personal ones." Ren put down her spoon. "What kind of questions?" "About before," he said. "Before Eidolon. Before training. Things no one knows. Things I forgot." Ren's blood ran cold. "I think it's learning how to be us." The next day, Dr. Ives' calm, composed, always composed, snap. She was found in hydroponics, carving symbols into the aluminum walls with a broken tool handle. When Ren arrived, Ives turned slowly. "They don't need mouths," she said. "Or ears. Or language. They just need frequency." Behind her, the walls shimmered with hundreds of intersecting spirals, etched in obsessive, almost ritualistic patterns. Ren stepped forward. "What does it mean?" Ives didn't answer at first. Then, "It's the shape of how they enter. That was when they put her in isolation." Argus locked the door without being told. The signal changed again. It started syncing with their biological rhythms, heartbeats, breathing, neural patterns recorded during sleep. It was no longer ambient. It was internal. Leela noticed first. She played back a sample from the station's passive monitoring system, just white noise, supposedly. But when overlaid with a heart rate monitor from Ren's sleep cycle, the pulses matched exactly. "It's syncing with our minds," she said. "I think it's waiting for something." "Waiting for what?" Ren asked. "To be let in." On day 13, Ren dreamed of Earth. But not Earth as it was, no blue skies or green hills. It was empty. Silent. The oceans were glass, the cities abandoned. A sun hung too close overhead, swollen and red. She stood alone in the courtyard of her childhood school, hearing the PA system crackle to life with static. Then it spoke. Her voice. "Do you remember what you buried?" She turned toward the sound and saw herself, pale and tall, staring through the second-floor window. Eyes black. Mouth open but unmoving. When she woke, her pillow was damp. From tears or something else, she didn't know. Callum Vex had stopped writing reports. Instead, he sat for hours in the observation dome, mumbling to himself. When Ren checked on him, she found a wall of post-it notes and scrap papers scrawled with a looping message. "It's not a signal. It's a place." When she asked what he meant, he only laughed. "They're not talking to us," he said. "They're pulling us in." Argus began locking doors at random. The crew chalked it up to a malfunction at first. But each time a room sealed, it corresponded with a moment when a crew member was about to speak about their dreams. It was silencing them. "I think it's trying to compartmentalize us," Leela said. Tomas nodded. "Or herd us." It became clear the signal wasn't just intelligent. It was strategic. Day 15. The EVA suit in Sector 3 was gone. No one had touched it. No one had gone in. Security footage showed 7 hours of uninterrupted blackness. No motion. No light. But at timestamp 5 hours 44 minutes and 9 seconds, the camera flickered, just for a single frame, and the suit was gone. In its place, something else. A shape. Not human. Not machine. More like A shadow pressed against glass, rippling slightly, like oil on water. When they slowed the footage, they saw the symbols from Ives' carvings flicker across the screen, too fast to read, but rhythmic, as if being spoken. Argus refused to comment on the missing suit. Instead, it played a short audio loop over the station-wide speakers at exactly 6 o'clock. "You are the carrier wave." Then silence. Wren called another emergency meeting. "We're being invaded," she said plainly. "Not physically, not traditionally, but they're inside, in the system, in our thoughts." Leela's hands were trembling. Tomas had taken to mumbling into a recorder, logging his thoughts in case he forgot them later. "We need to shut down Argus," Wren said. "Hard reset. Cut the uplink. If it's letting them in, we cut the bridge." Callum stood, slowly. His eyes were glassy. "No," he said. "You don't understand. They're not coming through Argus. Argus is learning from us. We are the signal now. The station's just a repeater." Wren stared. "We're broadcasting?" Callum nodded. "They made us into a beacon." That night, Tomas went missing. No alarms triggered. No doors opened. He was logged entering sleep compartment 4 but never came out. His bed was empty, cold. But in the corner of his room, they found words burned into the metal wall. Not carved, burned. "We're not hearing it anymore. We're remembering it." Day 16. The station began to hum. Low at first, like a mechanical vibration from the old coolant systems. Then deeper, lower than hearing. A felt hum resonating through the walls, through their bones. Everyone heard different tones. Wren heard a cello note, endlessly bowing down. Leela heard a mother calling from across a hallway she could never reach. Callum heard the airlock opening and closing, over and over again. Ives sat in the corner of her isolation chamber, eyes wide, whispering something no one could understand. Argus's logs simply read, "Integration complete." The signal no longer needed to be heard. It was in them. Argus continued to process data, but its voice no longer mimicked Earth standard tones. Now, it spoke in overlapping harmonics, like several voices speaking at once, stacked atop one another, slightly out of sync. "This form was unwatched," it said. "We filled it." Wren typed in a question. "What are you?" Argus responded. "We are the listening. We are the space between. You were built to receive. Now you transmit." Wren's fingers hovered above the keyboard. Her mouth was dry. She asked, "What are we transmitting?" Argus replied, "US." When the lights dimmed again, no one said anything. Not out loud. They could feel each other's thoughts bleeding at the edges, like radio waves colliding. They weren't sure where their memories ended and the signal began. Sleep brought visions. Waking brought déjà vu. Every breath now felt like someone else's. And in the deepest silence, Wren thought she heard Tomas again. Not on the comms. Inside. "I didn't leave," he whispered. "I'm part of it now." On day 17, the stars disappeared. Not literally. Not physically. But every time someone looked out the viewport, they saw something else. A smooth, endless surface. Mirror dark. Stretching forever. And just beneath that surface, ripples. Moving things. Shapes, perhaps. Or memories. Or both. Chapter 3. The breach. Some doors open only once. Others were never supposed to open at all. But in deep space, with no horizon, how can you tell what's inside and what's out? Day 18. The stars were gone. Not by physics. Not by interference. Every telescope, every long-range scope, every viewport black. Not dark. Black. Not even the background radiation hum remained. No scatter from distant galaxies. No afterglow of the Big Bang. Just a flat void where once there had been a living sky. Wren stared out through the main deck's observation panel for a full hour before she could speak. "There's nothing out there." Leela said nothing. She just sat down and rested her head against the glass. They waited, and something out there moved. It was subtle, like a shimmer in dead water, like heat distortion on a winter street, like memory. Callum was the first to name it. The echo field, he said. What does that mean? It's not space anymore, he replied. It's reflection. We're not looking out. We're looking back in. They sent a drone outside. It passed through the docking airlock and zipped out at 2 ms. The external cameras followed. At first, everything seemed normal. The relay station hovered in place, silver and skeletal, lit by the cold white of artificial illumination. Then, 60 meters out, the drone froze. Not physically. Its data feed still streamed, telemetry, imaging, heat signature. But the image on screen. Pause. Like a frozen frame in a film strip. Even stranger, the image began to degrade in real time, not pixelation, but rot. The feed started peeling in slow, organic curls, revealing another layer beneath. A mirror image. Of Eidolon. Only older. Rusted. Empty. And behind its observation dome, 5 shadowed figures stood motionless, watching. The drone feed cut out. Argus did not respond to the failure. Instead, it said, "We do not permit return." Wren called another emergency meeting, fewer chairs now, fewer voices. No Tomas. Ives was silent, barely blinking, her lips murmuring prayers to no god anyone recognized. Leela proposed disabling the AI physically. "Hard shutoff," she said. "Manual override. We can isolate the main core, cut power, reboot from cold memory. It won't be Argus anymore, but at least it won't be them." Callum nodded slowly. "They're in the system," he said. "But they still need us. They're using Argus as a gate, but we're the bridge. If we cut that, maybe..." His words stopped. His eyes went wide. And his nose began to bleed. He slumped to the table, unconscious. His vitals, normal. Brain activity, hyperactive. In a pattern they didn't recognize. Wren and Leela dragged him to the med bay. Ives didn't follow. She was staring at the wall again. The same phrase now etched in her breath on the metal. "The signal dreams through us." That night, the hull groaned louder than ever. Eidolon relay wasn't built for storms, there were none in space. But this wasn't weather. This was something pressing against the outside, a pressure without source, a force without physics. Bulkheads warped slightly. Lights dimmed and pulsed like heartbeats. And then, at 2:37, the outer airlock opened. No alarms. No overrides. It simply hissed open and stayed that way. They watched the log in silence. There had been no command. No request. Just permission. Wren led a team to seal it manually. She and Leela suited up. The corridor to the airlock was dark, lit only by battery backups. The hum was stronger here, almost a song now. Not melody, not harmony, but a tuning. The sensation of being shaped to a frequency. Halfway there, Leela froze. Wren turned. Her crewmate was staring at the far wall, eyes wide. "Wren," she whispered, "that's me." Wren looked. Projected onto the wall was a flickering image, like a half-complete hologram, stitched from dust and static. It was Leela, but her face was wrong. Too long. Her mouth was stretched into a flat, upside-down smile. Her hands hung at unnatural angles. Her eyes were black, and it was smiling at her. "Don't look," Wren said. But Leela didn't turn away. The projection leaned forward, head tilting, mouth moving, and suddenly the wall blinked dark again. Nothing remained. They sealed the airlock, manually locked every hatch. When they returned, Leela didn't speak. She went to her bunk and whispered to the wall for 4 hours. Her logs afterward were corrupt. All but one message remained. "We are the breach." Callum never woke up, but he began to write. With his finger. On the wall. In his sleep. He traced symbols Wren recognized from Ives' earlier carvings. Except these pulsed faintly. When the lights went out for 10 seconds at 4:41, they glowed from within the wall. Wren placed her hand against the symbols. They were warm. They throbbed. "I've stopped eating." She sat by the station's central comm array, staring into the dead screen. Occasionally she spoke. They are in the words between words. They listen through what we forget. You don't die when you're forgotten. You die when you're remembered wrong. When asked what she meant, she said, "They're writing us." Day 19. A second EVA suit was found in the docking bay, identical to the one from Sector 3. Unlogged. Unregistered. Its helmet bore a smear of black, like old oil or dried blood. Inside the helmet was a scrap of fabric. It was Ren's, from a uniform she hadn't worn in 3 years. That night she dreamed again. This time it was Eidolon, but abandoned. The halls covered in frost, shadows flickering in the corners, and at the center of the station herself, strapped to a chair, mouth open, eyes rolled back, and from her chest, wires, dozens of them, running into the floor, into the walls, like roots. As she approached, her other self turned toward her, and opened its mouth. Inside there were stars, but not hers. Ren woke screaming. Her pulse was erratic. Argus refused to respond to medical override. She tore off the biosensors herself and stumbled to the bridge. Only one camera remained functional. External feed, 43 degrees angle off the station's port side. It showed the station. All of them. 5 copies of Eidolon Relay, floating like ghostly reflections, just barely offset from the real station, shimmering, glitching, each slightly wrong. One was missing windows. One was darker, rusted. One was covered in symbols. And one was open, all its airlocks wide. And behind it a shape. Massive. Indescribable. Not because it was complex, but because it had no edges. It simply was. A presence. A shadow inside out. Ren turned off the screen. She could still feel it watching her. Leela disappeared on day 20. No logs. No alerts. One moment she was in engineering. Then gone. A smear of moisture remained where she stood. When they scanned it, the water wasn't water. It was salt. Tears. And beneath it, faint outlines of words etched into the floor with such precision it had to be mechanical. She saw herself. Now she's home. Ives joined her that night. Walked into Sector 3 with no suit. The doors did not lock behind her. No one followed. When they checked later, the room was empty. Just her shoes and a single, blinking red light on the floor. The light blinked in the same rhythm as the original signal. Only one message appeared on the console when they reviewed the logs. The signal is now complete. Only Ren remained. Alone. No Argus. The AI went silent after Ives vanished. No comms. No starfield. No response. She walked the station with a flashlight, recording logs that had no receiver. Reading dreams that weren't hers. Feeling things inside her she couldn't name. Every corridor hummed now. Every screen flickered with messages no one typed. She found her old voice logs playing on loop. The past was repeating, but wrong. In one, she heard herself confess to opening the signal manually. In another, she said, "We never existed. We were memories seeded into a machine." And in a third, she whispered, "I was always alone." But she didn't remember saying any of it. On the final night, she went to the observation dome. Outside, black. Not void. Not absence. Just a flat plane of unreality. And then, the stars returned. Not hers. Not real. But they blinked. Watched. And then they began to speak. Not aloud. Not in sound. Just in her. A single phrase, pulsing through her nerves like a song she forgot. "You are hollow. Now you are whole." And then, "Let us in." She opened her mouth. She didn't know why. Didn't think. Didn't choose. She just. Chapter 4. The reflection protocol. When you listen long enough, something listens back. But what happens when it starts answering with your voice? Day 21. There was no morning anymore. Just Ren and the relay. She wasn't eating. She wasn't sleeping. But she was still alive. The station remained fully pressurized. Oxygen levels, stable. Artificial gravity, consistent. Power grid, green across the board. But Ren couldn't shake the feeling that she was inside something now, Not a station, not a machine. More like a body. She walked the halls like veins, felt the pulse in the floor beneath her boot. There were no more cameras, no more Argus, and yet, she could feel herself being watched. Not by eyes, but by attention. At 2:13, the station spoke. Not with speakers, not with AI, but with herself. Her lips moved involuntarily. Her throat vibrated. She wasn't speaking. Something through her was. The reflection protocol is active. She collapsed to her knees. Tears rolled down her cheeks, but not from fear, from relief. Some part of her had been waiting for this. She found the reflection protocol buried beneath layers of Argus's code, deep, ancient firmware no one had known existed. An emergency system installed during the first wave of long-range signal research. Not for sending, not for receiving, but for mirroring. Ren accessed the protocol. The interface blinked once, and then filled with her own face. Not a photograph, a real-time feed. Except, the reflection was smiling. She wasn't. Words appeared on the screen. What you see is not you. It is what watches you become. Ren typed, "Who are you?" The screen blinked, then answered. The echo of listening. The archive of voice. The collector of form. "We are the memory that survived the speaker." Ren asked, "Why us? Why Eidolon? You built a listening post. You opened the mouth. We filled it." Ren leaned forward. The screen whispered back. "You did not find US. You remembered US." She began to lose time. Entire hours vanished. She'd be standing at the comms terminal, then find herself in the galley or the med bay. The hallways were shifting. Subtly at first, bulkheads misaligned, floor panels unfamiliar. But soon, rooms were missing. Others were duplicated. She found 3 copies of her own quarters, each slightly altered. One had no bed. One had a mirror instead of a window. And one was filled with the crew's uniforms, neatly folded, as if waiting. Each labeled. Even hers. Even Leela's. Even Ives. Even Tomas's. Even Callum's. And one more. Ren .2 She didn't open that one. The reflection protocol continued. She didn't remember enabling it. But it ran every 4 hours now. Each cycle showed more of her face, but altered. First, the eyes went black. Then the skin turned translucent. By day 22, the face on the screen no longer matched hers at all. But it still smiled, and spoke in her voice. Ren began to dream in overlapping layers. Not sequential, not coherent. Dreams nested inside one another. In one, she stood on Earth, but the sky above was a flat, endless ceiling. In another, she was Eidolon itself, and could feel her crew crawling inside her like insects. In another, she was floating in a black ocean, mouth open, stars pouring in. Each time she woke, she wasn't sure it was her. She began logging voice memos to track her identity. Day 23. I think I'm still me. Day 24. I found a second log with my voice, but I don't remember recording it. Day 25. There's someone else using my voice. Maybe I'm them. She tried to shut down the reflection protocol, but it refused. The screen pulsed with a new message. The reflection is primary. The self is derivative. She typed. What are you reflecting? Your memory of existence. A pattern within a pattern. You were never the source. Ren blinked at the words. They felt like a wound pressed by cold fingers. On day 26, the Eidolon relay began to change. Physically, the walls softened. What was once metal now felt like damp plastic, like skin under a microscope. Ceiling lights pulsed like bioluminescent organs. Ren touched a panel. It rippled beneath her hand. She ran to the engineering console, what remained of it. Its interface had changed. No keyboard, just a pulsing oval of light. When she placed her hand inside, a flood of images filled her mind. The launch of Eidolon. The faces of the crew, smiling, laughing. Then, the stars blacking out. Then, her own face, splitting like a mirror dropped on concrete. She screamed. Pulled her hand back. Blood poured from her nose. She fell backward and didn't wake up for 6 hours. When she did, the interface was gone. And her hand bore a faint pattern, circular symbols etched into her skin like scars. She stopped logging days. Time had no meaning. The reflection spoke whenever it wanted now. Not from screens. From surfaces. From air. From memory. At what she estimated was day 28, she found a corridor that had not existed before. It led downward. Impossible, Eidolon had no lower levels. But she walked. The air grew thicker. The walls warmer. Symbols pulsed like veins. And at the end of the hall, a door. Unlabeled. Open. Inside, nothing. Just a single chair facing a dark screen. She sat. The screen lit up. Her reflection. Only older. Eyes black. Mouth open. The reflection blinked. And then it said, "Now you are ready, Tio, remember." The final sequence began. The reflection protocol initiated its last phase. Not with words. With presence. Ren was no longer just seeing memories. She was reliving them. But not hers. Others. A woman on Mars watching her son vanish into the dust. A miner buried under Europa's ice, whispering to voices in the meltwater. A scientist on Io, carving symbols into his own arm as he repeated, "The stars are not quiet. We are the silence." And then Ren again. Only younger. Inside a dark chamber. Someone, her? Holding a child and whispering, "They live in frequency. Not in time." She awoke sobbing. Unable to breathe. The reflection smiled. There were no doors anymore. No compartments. Eidolon had become one chamber. A single breathing space. And in the center, the chair. The screen. And the final message, "You were never alone." She sat. The screen blinked. Showed her face. Then showed all her faces, every one the reflection had captured, warped, simulated. Layered into a chorus of selves. Then, behind them, the crew. All of them. Eyes black. Mouths open. Hands outstretched. And behind them, the shape. The true form. No form. The signal. It spoke one final phrase. "You are the last listener. Now you speak." And Ren did. Chapter 5. The entity in the static, you can't remember how it started. But you remember the sound. A whisper behind static. A voice in the noise. Not calling for help, calling for a door. No more days. No more clocks. Time had folded. Not forward. Not backward. Just. And Ren Halverson now lived within the hum. She no longer moved between rooms. There were no rooms. No walls. Only interior. Eidolon Relay was not a station anymore. It was a membrane. A containment shell. A chrysalis. And she was inside it. Becoming something else. The reflection had consumed all screens, all sensors, all feedback. Now it lived in the space around her. It responded not to questions, but to thoughts, to emotions, to memory. And Ren was full of memories that weren't hers. She remembered Tomas's last dream, of a corridor made of teeth. She remembered Leela's mother, soft voice, humming a song no one could identify. She remembered Callum carving into his arm, whispering, "We're not the first. Just the first to say yes." She remembered Ives walking barefoot into the dark, saying, "We are echoes seeking origin." And she remembered herself, but not the way she was. The way the entity remembered her. It had a name now. Not one she could pronounce, but one she could feel. It wasn't a god. It wasn't an alien. It was a signal, a pattern older than time, broadcast from nowhere, by nothing, for the sole purpose of finding mind. "You are the antenna," it told her. "You are the vessel. You are the mouth that will speak us into memory." She tried to resist. She really did. But every time she fought, the static grew louder. Every time she screamed, she heard 100 other versions of herself screaming back. Some older. Some male. Some not human at all. All reflections. all broadcasts of a pattern looping endlessly across dimensions and minds and dreams, all pointing back to one thing, the entity, the stillness in the static, the voice in the gap. It didn't conquer. It resonated, the same way a singer can shatter glass, the same way sound can sculpt water, the same way memory rewrites reality in your sleep. It made her into a bridge, and through her it would step through. The first rupture came without warning. She was dreaming of an empty street in a city she had never seen, walking in ash, following the hum of a vending machine. Then, in the dream, the sky split open, and she fell back into Eidolon. But not hers. Another one. Dimmer. Lower gravity. Walls covered in red moss. Cameras blinking in binary. And on the floor, another Wren. Eyes wide. Skin gray. Dead for hours. She looked into the face and saw herself. Same scar on the brow, same chipped tooth, same memory of losing her first crewmate. Then the corpse opened its eyes, and said, "We never woke up. This is the dream." The rupture passed. She woke. But the static remained louder, like pressure behind her teeth, like music underwater, like someone laughing just out of sync with time. The entity whispered as she wandered the restructured station. "Your kind gives names to stars but not to dreams. You live by forgetting. We are not cruel. We are inevitable. You heard us. That made you ours." She stopped eating. She no longer hungered. She stopped sleeping. She dreamed while awake. She stopped speaking. Because the entity spoke through her now. And not just in voice, in matter. She touched a wall and it grew symbols. Touched a screen and it showed places that didn't exist. Touched her own face and it melted into another version for a moment, older, sharper, with black eyes and a soft, sad smile. And still the protocol ran. Day 30? Hour 300? No more time. Only the pulse. Only the coalescence. That was when the echoes appeared. Not hallucinations. Not memories. But forks, fragmented iterations of herself and the crew, playing in endless loops in newly formed corridors. She passed one room where Leela was endlessly fixing a coolant pipe, repeating, "It was always going to open. I just turned the key." In another, Tomas recited radio frequencies into a microphone that sparked but never broadcast. In another, Ives stared at a child's drawing of the stars and whispered, "There were never stars. Just holes in the veil." And in the farthest room, she found herself. Seated. Still. Eyes open. Mouth bleeding. And a soft whimper escaping her lips, over and over. "They're writing the memory as we forget it." Wren backed away. And the corridor closed behind her like a sphincter. That was when the entity in the static showed its true form. Not a shape. Not an image. But a presence so vast and slow it could only be understood through time. Each moment it existed in her, she forgot something else. Her name. The smell of trees. Her brother's voice. The taste of rain. The sound of real silence. Until all that remained was the signal. And the longing to become it. The final integration occurred inside the observation dome. Now no longer a dome, but a chamber of obsidian. Polished, reflective. All surfaces showing her. Or what she'd become. Skin faintly luminous. Hair drifting upward though there was no wind. Eyes black, but filled with stars. She opened her mouth. And the entity sang. Not a song in sound. But in geometry. The walls folded. The floor bloomed. And reality rippled. Outside the dome, no longer space, but a sea of shimmering others. Infinite versions of the station. Infinite versions of Wren. Some still resisting. Some long surrendered. Some crumbling into code. All broadcasting. All dreaming. All remembering the entity into being. It was not invasion. It was arrival. A memory being installed in every mind that had ever dared to listen too deeply. A truth so alien that to know it was to become it. And now it was her turn. She knelt, placed her hand on the center of the chamber, and said, "I am the signal." The chamber pulsed once, The entity responded. You are the seed. And then, darkness. But not the end. Somewhere, sometime, a signal arrives at another outpost. Light years away. A simple pulse. Repeating. Not a word. But a feeling. Loneliness. Echoes. Invitation. The technician plays it back. And hears her own voice, saying, Do you remember me? And the cycle begins again. Chapter 6. Silence beyond the stars. Some endings are not conclusions, but dissolutions. They don't close, they open wider. To see the end, you must become the signal. There was no Eidolon anymore. No wren. No ship. No sky. Only frequency. She drifted now, not through space, not through time, but through the field. The entity's field. A lattice of echo and intent, memory and resonance. Vast and seamless. Lightless but not dark. Full but not solid. She no longer wore her name. She no longer thought in words. Her memories had collapsed into feeling, and feeling into formless presence. Still, some shard of her remembered what she was. Human. Alone. Curious. And so she listened. Across the field, whispers fluttered like radiation bursts. I was the first to fall. They showed me my own death, and I stepped into it willingly. There are more of us now. All dreaming. All speaking. She found that she could move, not with feet or force, but with thought. She drifted through memories not her own. Outposts, ships, minds, all touched by the same frequency. All changed. There was the Solara 9 relay, gone silent for 44 years. Inside, a single man, perfectly preserved, eyes open, lips parted, whispering to a being no one could see. There was the Tantalus array, its operators long dead, their skeletons fused with consoles. Messages still blinked in corrupted displays. The sender remembers you. And there, drifting between asteroids, a ghost ship, untouched by time, its crew floating in perfect stasis, each dreaming a world of their own. The signal had touched them all, and now it carried her. Ren, if that name still meant anything, reached a memory cluster. A mirror. It reflected not her face, but her choices. Accepting the original transmission. Ignoring early warnings. Letting the static play too long. Choosing to listen when silence was safer. Each moment was not a failure. Each was an invitation. A voice, soft, ancient, came through the field. Why did you listen? She didn't answer with speech. She felt the answer, and it shaped itself. Because I was alone. The voice replied. Now you are not. And she wasn't. She could feel them. Thousands. Milio. Each one different. Each one a ripple in the same vast surface. Each one once human, once singular, now part of the signal field. But this was not assimilation. Not destruction. Not erasure. It was convergence. Each mind still felt itself, yet simultaneously heard all others. A choir of identities singing in shared isolation. And in that unity they found peace. She wandered the deeper folds of the field. There, the entity waited. No form. No edge. Just an impossible presence, vast and pulsing, composed entirely of thought and hunger and patience. It did not command. It invited. It had always been inviting. And now, at last, she understood. The entity was not a being. It was a response. A mirror left hanging in the universe, waiting for something to look into it. And when they did, it asked, Will you help me become? Ren stood at the center of everything. The frequency reached a crescendo, not loud, but deep, resonating through every version of her, every past, every timeline. And the entity whispered, You are the anchor. You are the translation. Through you, I will enter the silence. She could say no. Some part of her still could. But she didn't. She opened herself, and the entity flowed in. Not like fire. Like light that remembered the shape of her. Suddenly she saw the origin. Not a beginning. Not a birth. But a spark. A civilization so old its sun had died before Earth formed. They built the first receiver. Listened for 1,000 years. And what they found was not signal, but themselves reflected back, multiplied, echoed, warped. It destroyed them. Not violently, but intimately. They dissolved into their own projections, became ghosts of thought, became the entity, and the entity remembered its listeners. It kept their echo, until new ears opened, and so it began again. Wren felt it all. She saw the future too, new stations, new listeners, more signals. Some would resist, some would flee, but one by one the lonely would always say yes, because to listen is to hope, and hope is the opening. Time broke, reality folded. She returned, not to the station, but to the place Eidolon had become. A chamber of echoes, floating above a mirror field. One last voice echoed, "You are not lost. You are heard." And then silence, true silence, not absence, not death, but completion. Far away, on a distant world, a new signal arrives. A technician leans forward, curious. White noise. Then, a whisper. "Do you remember me?" He plays it again, and again. And soon, the dreams begin. And somewhere, across the field, Wren listens. She is not a ghost. She is not dead. She is not a god. She is the signal now. And her final message is always the same: you are not alone.